Hello, everyone, and welcome to Shaping the Industry. Tonight we have Benom on, and Adrian's going to be helping me interview him. Benom, why don't you start off the show with telling us a little bit about yourself and your experience?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on. Yeah, again, my name is Benom Plumb. I'm now a professor at CU Denver in the music industry program there. And what qualifies me to do this whole thing is I was vice president of licensing administration at a music publisher in Nashville called Blue Water Music. I basically ran the synchronization department, so that involved licensing songs for TV shows and film, managing song catalogs from songs that were recorded by artists ranging anywhere from Willie Nelson to the Ghetto Boys to Charlie Parker. It was working in independent music publishing. You get to wear a lot of hats, and so we not only worked in just music publishing, but also artist management and all kinds of different sectors in the music industry. So that's basically what qualifies me to be here and to do the professor gig. So
Hmm. Um, so could you describe what publishing is? The term that's get thrown out around a lot, but it's not something that's really well understood.
yeah, it is a nebulous part of the industry for people to understand. Essentially, the way you can think about music publishing is it just has to do with the musical composition. So you have to kind of compartmentalize it because when someone records a song, they're recording a song that's already been written. So music publishing has to do with the song itself. So it's the creation of a song by a songwriter, meaning just the music and the lyrics. And then that would be the copyright ownership of those songs, and then we manage them, and then we pitch them for different kinds of licensing uses. So like publishers, music publishing, we make the majority of our money like when other artists will cover our songs, when radio plays the songs, whether that be digital streaming or terrestrial, and then when TV or film or advertising, video game productions will use our songs in their productions. That's where publishers make their money. So it has a little bit of an advantage in publishing. So, for instance, if you watch a movie and someone just sings a song on camera, but they don't use the recording that you've heard before, the publisher makes money on that, and the owner of the recording, usually the record company, does not make money because they didn't use the recording. So it's important to compartmentalize those two things. Publishing really has to do with the musical composition. That's the underlying music and lyrics, the chord changes, the melody, the arrangement, that sort of thing.
Okay. Um, because the revenue is kind of split, see a lot more recording companies starting to get more into the publishing scene as recording.
Well, yeah, I mean, all the major record companies have what they call affiliated publishing companies. So if you sign to Sony Music, they might want to also sign you to Sony ATV Music Publishing. Um, and it goes vice versa with the publishing side too. Music publishers are really getting into artist development, and in that sense, publishers will not only help creatively develop songs, but at the same time, they're developing an artist and developing the recordings too. So it does go both ways. And but there's a lot of legal implications to that. Like if you were to sign to a record company and they sign you to publishing at the same time, sometimes they'll try to cross the money of those agreements. So for instance, you could be really successful as a songwriter, but maybe you suck as an artist, and they might want to take the publishing money that you're good, that you've done well with, and cross that with your losses as an artist. So you have to be careful with those sort of things. But yeah, I mean, you can't have music without songs, and that's where music publishing comes in. It's the ownership of those songs, and I would say that hardcore record company guys really sometimes aren't fans of music publishers because they have to pay the music publishers in order to actually record and commercially release those songs in their recordings. So it's always been a cost of their business, but it's something certainly that both sides have gotten into one way or the other.
Hmm. Could you give an example if you've ever had problems with any?
Oh, I mean, I think the big problem is what something called the controlled composition clause, and this is, I mean, for independent artists out there that are listening, this really doesn't apply for them. But if you were signed to a record company, essentially they're supposed to pay you as a songwriter in order to release your song on that record, and they're supposed to pay you a royalty for that. And so the main problem that we come across is that the record company will try to pay a reduced rate for that royalty for you as a songwriter to release your song in their recording, and that's something that publishers fight a lot because that rate is actually regulated and restricted on music publishers and songwriters by the government. And so, and it's 9.1 cents for those that are listening and want to know. It's 9.1 cents a song per copy. That's for physical product and for downloads. And so when the record company wants to get a reduced rate on that, um, you're actually, you're leaving money on the table, and we're already held to these standards by the government. So that sort of problem happens a lot with record companies because they want a reduced rate for that royalty they're supposed to pay you for your songs.
So, what is a mistake that you end up seeing artists making when trying to get their song out?
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of mistakes, but I would say mainly not understanding the full scope of what their rights and their publishing income sources are. So, for example, this is something I hear artists say a lot. They say, "Yeah, I sold some songs to a TV show." See, but the problem with that is that when you sell a song, it actually means a transfer of copyright ownership. So what the artist means to say is that I license some songs to a TV show because if you sell a song, that means someone buys the copyright from you for a purchase price. And so that's actually part of the music publishing business is we would have artists all the time say, well, I'm looking to sell my music publishing catalog, which then we would analyze their royalties and say, oh, okay, well, your music publishing catalog is worth X amount and we'll buy it for this amount. That's selling a song. So I think it's important for them to understand their rights because if you're dealing with a shark or someone who might take advantage of your lack of knowledge or education on the issue, you could say, "Oh, I want to sell you a song," and then you actually like didn't read the contract, you don't know what selling a song means, and then all of a sudden you just transferred the copyright ownership for it. So, but also in addition to that, I think a lot of artists nowadays are also into the sampling thing. And that also is a really complex licensing negotiation. So we see artists today putting out like a lot of mixtapes, a lot of remixes, writing new songs that incorporate a sample from another artist's song or another artist's recording. And in reality, that behavior can be really, really dicey. And you can get yourself in a lot of hot water, a lot of legal trouble, especially if you have like a hit song. I mean, and so, the most recent example of that would be the whole issue with Robin Thicke and the Marvin Gaye estate on "Got to Give It Up." I don't agree with that particular ruling, but I think artists really need to understand that if you're truly going to sample someone's song, you actually have to go through a licensing negotiation and split the copyright with that original with the original artist or the writer on that song that you're sampling. And I'm just seeing a lot of that, and they're just kind of freewheeling and doing it, putting up on SoundCloud and getting mixtapes and selling them, and not actually giving credit back to where they're actually pulling some of the music from. So those are the two main things that I see a lot of mistakes happening with artists right now.
Mhm. And like that's a lot of information that a lot of artists don't really talk about, and like people in the industry don't really talk about. What would you recommend people to go to learn about these things?
Well, you know, there's really not one particular place that you can go. I mean, you can find out a little information by googling things, but my suggestion is to buy some specific music industry text, some textbooks. The first one, we use this in my intro to music business class, is Donald Passman's book. It's called All You Need to Know About the Music Business. And that is kind of a catch-all book that can really it spans more than just publishing. It talks about all the various aspects of the music industry. So really getting some good textbooks and doing your research through books that are written by proven industry professionals. And Passman's a lawyer, and he's an attorney for lots of big artists and songwriters and that sort of thing. So Passman's book is great. There's also another book by the Brabeck brothers, Todd and Jeff Brabeck, and it's called Music, Money, and Success. And though if you were to pick up those two books, if you were to pick up All You Need to Know About the Music Business by Passman and Music, Money, and Success by the Brabeck brothers, and you really paid attention to it and took notes, you would really have a good grasp on some things, I think. But I don't suggest people go to Wikipedia and places like that. It's not a good source. You really need to go to people who have been doing this and have been in the trenches. And those two books are really two great resources for that.
Why don't you recommend Wikipedia?
It sucks. I mean, anybody can just write whatever the hell they want to on that thing, and it's taken as truth. And that's how the internet has been. That's one of the downfalls of the internet is that any Joe Schmo who can just write something up there and thinks they know something about it can get it up there. And if you know how to do search engine optimization, then your article comes up first when someone does a search for music publishing, and then all of a sudden people take it as truth. And with Wikipedia, I don't consider it a reliable source. I really don't.
Okay.
So when my students quote Wikipedia in any papers that they write for me, I just say that's not a reliable source. You gotta use something else. So yeah.
So going back to like more of your time at the publishing side, what was something that you wish you could have changed?
Um, just kind of you mean you just change about publishing in
Yeah.
general kind of thing. Um, Honestly, and I already kind of mentioned this a little bit. It's just in publishing, the government actually places restrictions on music publishers and songwriters. So, for example, when you listen to Spotify, and Spotify is considered interactive streaming because you can pick and choose which song is going to come next. You can make your own playlist and that sort of thing. Government regulations on the music publishing industry um, has it to where the publishing side of an interactive stream is not valued the same as the record company recording artist side is. So currently, the copyright for a sound recording earns 8 to 14 times more on a Spotify interactive stream than the publishing side does, and that's because of government regulations. So if I were king for a day, I would change the restrictions that are placed on publishers and songwriters by the government. And there's actually some things in motion that are happening right now to do that, which is good news. You can't have a recording without a song. Okay, everyone agree with that. You can't have a recording without a song, and a song can't reach its fullest potential without a good recording. So why aren't they valued the same? But the way the government has placed restrictions on music publishers, our copyright for a music composition is actually valued less than the recording that embodies that composition. And that's one of those things I would like to see changed.
And like you said, there's some things going through right now. If you had to guess, like how long would you think it would take?
I mean, if we're waiting on an act of Congress, I mean, God knows, and that's why certain people have gone to try to do direct things themselves and to bypass that. But unfortunately, it's going to take an act of Congress, and you know, uh, I don't know. I mean, hopefully, we would see some real changes happen within the next 5 to 10 years. But it will probably be longer than that, especially depending on what happens in the next presidential election as well, because that really has a lot to do with it. So every time we have a new changeover in Congress, we have a new changeover in the presidency. Some of this stuff either gets pushed forward or it gets put on the back burner, depending on where their understanding is of this particular issue. But it's a big issue, and they've made quite a bit of movement with it. The Copyright Office has recently come out with a lot of new changes that could help this, but I mean, dude, it's Congress and it's frustrating. So I would say hopefully in the next 5 to 10 years. So
We just got a question from Jagger192. And at what point would you recommend an artist to sign with a publisher when they're just starting out?
once you have a good batch of songs, so whenever artists would come to me and want to consider doing a deal, I would always say, send me your most favorite, what you think is the best, you know, portrayal of your work in 3 to 5 songs. So you want to have a good batch of songs, I would say somewhere at least between 10 and 15 songs, but send a publisher 3 to 5 songs, and you can start a relationship with a publisher simply by just kind of doing it song by song, and particularly say you have a song that you think would be really great for some sort of TV show or a film use, and they might have an opportunity to pitch that. It's worth your time to do that, because a relationship with a publisher can really mean the difference between your songs collecting dust in your bedroom and them actually seeing some activity out in the public commercial sector. So if you have 3 to 5 great songs that you really believe in, and hopefully that they have a pretty good recording to them as well. Generally you want to have some stuff mastered and mixed, produced pretty well before you send it to them. But publishers again are always all about the song, so I don't want to sway people from sending something that may not be the best recording if you believe it's a good song. But try to put together a batch of songs, 10 to 15 songs, cherry pick 3 to 5, and really think of how those could be used. Whether that means another artist records them, or they could go on a TV show or a film or something like that. So, but as soon as you've got some songs that you love and you believe in, then it's a good time to try and open that relationship up with the publisher. Definitely.
Okay, so like, what is something that you like about where the publishing business is going?
Well, I think it's an interesting question, because the publishing business, where it's going, is kind of where it's always been, in the sense that it's been a cornerstone of the music industry. Because without music publishing, you have no music industry. Everything comes down to a song. So it all starts there with the song. So without songs, there's no music. Everyone agrees with that. Without songs, there's no music. Without music publishing, there's no music industry. So sometimes it's been referred to as the real estate of the music industry. And what that means simply is that, when you own real estate, you own some land, you own a house. If somebody wants to come rent or they want to build on that, they need to pay you for it. And that's what the composition is, because everything starts with the song, and then the recording is built on top of that, and then other productions will use that. Music publishing is a good investment. Great songs are a great investment. That's why Michael Jackson went and purchased part of the Beatles catalog, because those songs continued to grow in value over time. And so, see the music publishing business going, even with the government restrictions, is that it's always been a cornerstone of the business, because there is no music business, there's no music without songs, and music publishing controls the songs. You don't have, and that's the thing. You don't even have to sign with a music publisher. You could just do something from an indie standpoint, and you're your own music publisher. At that point, you would want to have a relationship with a music publisher to at least represent your licensing and your royalty collections, because that's a very complex aspect of music publishing, because there's multiple income sources. So, people that sell toothbrushes, that's where their income is. We just sell toothbrushes. But with music publishing, you get income from all kinds of different uses and sources. And that's the exciting part about publishing. Once you understand that the concept of how your songs can continually have value added to them, if somebody wants to use their song, they have to go through the publishing angle in order to license it and pay you for that. So um, I think publishing is always going to weather these storms. It's going to remain a pillar of the music industry. I would just like to see us get past some of these government restrictions for our product. So
And what is something that you dislike that is just about the publishing business, not necessarily government's involvement?
yeah, well, I mean, the true nature of publishing is to add value to the songs, to add value to the copyrights, and in this process, lots of music publishers have kind of gotten a bad rep for really playing hardball in their process of trying to add value to it. So I feel like there has to be a balancing of music publishers still adding value to the songs, but not necessarily playing too much of a hardball with their copyrights, in order just to you know not to in order in the name of adding value to it, that they're going to play hardball on these things. So the example of that is, like, for instance, I recently tried to clear a sample license with a major music publisher. I was writing some rock songs. I'm a musician myself, and I sampled a Stone Temple Pilots riff, and the major music publisher was just like, no, you can't do it. And they wanted me to pay $2,500 up front plus a copyright split kind of thing. And it's like, I mean, I would have been happy, if the song would have made, $100 or something like that. But the publisher wanted $2,500 for it plus a copyright split, that sort of thing. And they were playing hardball on it, and I get it because me as an independent artist or whatever is not going to make them a lot of money, but that's where publishers tend to get a bad rep because any independent artist who just wants to maybe sample one little riff or something like that, even if it's from a big artist like Stone Temple Pilots, they're like, well, how am I going to pay $2,500 up front for that? You know what I mean? It's like I can't even. I'm eating ramen over here and trying to write songs, man. So I think that's one aspect that I do dislike about publishing. In the name of adding value and making money, we make it difficult and stifle the creative process for other independent artists.
So if you were on the other side of that deal, what would you have changed?
Normally, so I would do sample clearances from time to time, and if it was a small independent artist and they're like, "Hey, man, I'm poor, I'm just trying to create some art here," I would try to work out a deal. I would still do an upfront fee, but something that they would perhaps that they could afford. So maybe not $2,500, maybe $200, and still do a copyright split, and just try to work within their situation, sort of deal. But again, if Stone Temple Pilots was my client, I would still have to send that over to Stone Temple Pilots, and then they would just say no. And the thing is on that particular tune, it was I think it was Scott Weiland was a writer on there, and I think he's estranged from that band. So when you have a situation like that, it probably wasn't going to get cleared anyway, just because those guys don't even speak to one another. And if you have a major client like that, they're going to have the last say. You know what I mean? A band like that, a band that big, a band that successful, they're going to have the last say. And they can just say no if they want to on a sample like that. So there's two sides to it. But whenever I did it, I would try to find some sort of way to help them because I understand the struggle that it is for someone who's an independent artist and you're just trying to make some music, and you think a little piece of a riff is cool, so you do it, and then you try to do the right thing, but then you get penalized for doing the right thing. You see what I'm saying? So, but that's the way it goes, man. They have a right to say no, and that's okay.
So you said the band would have to approve it. Does that mean like a huge band, or like are they constantly approving sample licenses, or is it going through other people?
That's a great question. It depends. It depends on how involved they are. Normally, it's probably going to run through a manager, and so in that situation, I imagine this publisher sent the information over to Stone Temple Pilots management, and management just said no. I doubt anyone in the band ever even heard, the new composition that incorporated that riff. So oftentimes, it's usually going to be what we like to call a gatekeeper, usually a manager, something of that nature, that's going to be the one approving or disapproving it. Because sometimes the artists are just too busy, or you can't get in touch with them. But other artists are really involved. Other writers will be involved in that too. So it really just depends on who we're talking about. But most of the time, it's going to be a gatekeeper like a manager. So
Okay. So going back to the artist side, what is something that you're seeing successful artists doing right now?
really, just the incorporation of entrepreneurship with being a creative artist, because I mean, you have to take charge and be educated. Not only in things like music theory and recording arts and that sort of thing, but also the mechanics of running your own business. So the successful artists today are not just strictly creative individuals. They're also business people. So you can't just have the music goods and the music chops. You also have to be smart, like really, really smart. So if you look at people like P. Diddy, Taylor Swift, Dave Grohl, those are phenomenal artists, but they're also extremely smart business people. And that's the new artist today. You can't just boom and smoke pot and make music and then expect everyone to do the work for you. That ain't happening anymore, because the people that did that, they always ended up getting screwed anyway because somebody was stealing from them. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, I really think it's the marriage of taking charge and being educated and being a smart business person, because anybody who's anybody in the music industry has done it from an entrepreneurship angle. They really have. And so that's what successful artists today are doing, is they're really taking charge and not only being an artist, but they're also being they're running their own business. So
Okay. And so when you were like looking for new talent at the publishing company, what would you look for?
um, you know, great songs. I mean, I know it's kind of a silly answer, but I'm always looking first and foremost for songs that are compelling. But in publishing, we're not only looking for compelling songs, but we're also looking for people who can be a compelling performer as well. Because it was always of interest if someone not only wrote good songs, but they're also a really good performer of their own songs too, in which case we might do something like an artist development deal. So the first thing is, I'm looking for someone who writes compelling songs, and those are when I say that, compelling songs meaning songs that have strong rhythm, they have a strong melody, a strong hook, lyrics that are really outside of the box, and good arranging in those songs. But if they can perform those songs in a way that makes me believe them, that's all I'm asking for. Because I may not necessarily be into the genre sort of thing, but if I see someone perform a song that is compelling, um, I want to believe them. You know what I mean? And so that's all I'm asking for, is that when you perform a song, when you play a song that you've written, that I believe you. There's a great scene in Walk the Line, the film about Johnny Cash. Have you ever seen that before, Zach?
I've not.
Okay, you got to watch it, because there's a scene where Johnny Cash goes into the studio and he plays an old gospel tune for Sam Phillips, and Sam Phillips says, "I don't believe you. You mean to tell me if you were sitting in a ditch out there dying, that's the song you would sing?" And I thought it was a fantastic, fantastic snapshot of what people are looking for, not just people in the music industry, not just professionals, but the audience as well. So, looking for a song that and a performer that is compelling and that we believe you, that's what we're looking for.
Okay. And then last question from me, I think, is what is something that's underappreciated in the music business slash publishing world?
Dude, man, how much freaking work it takes to write and produce a good song. I mean, people want music to be free, or at least for it to feel free. But think about the time and the effort that it took, first of all, to write, and then for most of us, rewrite the dang song over and over and over. And then to find the right musicians, the right producers. Think about all the time that goes into trying to find the right guitar tones, the right drum tones, the right effects, using the right microphones, mixing, mastering, all of that to try and get folks to stream a song for fractions of a penny, or perhaps buy a song for $1, or in the best case scenario, buy concert tickets or something. Man, we put in a lot of work just trying to write and produce a good song. And so, I just don't think people fully appreciate the hard work and the skill that it takes to bring music to life, because it's something that I think that's really underappreciated. For those of us that are in music, we know how hard it is to write a song. I mean, and not only just write, but then to try and take it to the next level. So that's what I see, man. A lot of my clients and people work really, really hard day in and day out to make music come to life, and I think that gets underappreciated a lot.
And something that I like to ask my guests, what do they think music is worth?
Right, right,
So, what do you,
right.
if you had to put a price point on it, what would you think?
Yeah, I mean, and I guess the question back is, what format are we talking? Because how many people, what, because this is an interesting conversation. We have so many segmented and fragmented, possibilities and options for people to listen to music. So, what is of value to people? Personally, for me, I mean, dude, I love vinyl. I love music being experiential. So if I'm not going to a show, I like to set a vinyl record down, sit down, shut off the TV, and sit there and just listen and experience the music. And so, I mean, if we're talking about streaming, the price point it shouldn't be, you know, 0.0000 whatever, you know. I mean, Spotify says they pay relatively around half a penny that goes to all the rights owners. Well, that's not an accurate price point. It's really not. Pandora pays even less. So, I mean, really, we should get to the point where we're somewhere in between a penny and 5 cents a stream, to be honest. But the market can't sustain that right now. So, you know, a lot of it comes down to what format we're talking about. Are we talking streaming? Are we talking vinyl? Or do people still download? Or, you know, are we talking concert tickets? That sort of thing. It's really all over the map. But you have to really, again, it has to go back to supply and demand, and what is the market willing to bear? What are people, normal people like you and me, willing to pay? You know, I don't want to pay. Honestly, I don't want to really pay more than $50 for a concert ticket. I really don't. You know, and most people won't do that. So, you know, it's extremely subjective, and I appreciate the question, but I don't know quite how to pinpoint it because there's so many different ways that we could possibly price point music. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but I don't want to pay more than $50 for a concert ticket, and I think streaming should at least land somewhere between a penny and 5 cents a stream. So, it needs to land somewhere in there. And the other interesting thing is that, you know, in terrestrial radio, people make a lot more in public performance money on terrestrial radio than they do on streaming. And in streaming, we have more, and we have more accurate, and we have better data on digital streaming than we do in terrestrial, because terrestrial radio performances kind of get taken in by samples and surveys and that sort of thing, and that's not usually as accurate as getting the precise reading and demographic and, you know, geo tracking that we can do on people who stream music. So with the knowledge and the data that we have in streaming, that is of far more value than what we have on terrestrial radio, which actually pays out better. So we have to see a flipping of the models at some point. So I'm rambling a little bit, but I hope you get the point.
Yeah.
So, Benom, I got a three-part question for you. In the world of publishing, what's the most profitable area from a musician standpoint, then from a businessman standpoint, and then on top of that, what are some of the biggest red flags that artists should watch out for once they start getting a following and gaining popularity, that sort of thing?
Well, it's interesting the way you pose the question about the profitable avenues, because in publishing they're the same for both the musician, which was really the songwriter, and the businessman, which is the music publisher, because every dollar of music publishing income is split 50-50 between the writer, is the musician in this question, and the publisher, who is the businessman. So no matter how many writers there are or how many publishers there are, that still gets split 50-50. So if there were 5 writers and there were 5 publishers, that 50% gets split 5 ways on each side. So there's always a writer share and there's always a publisher share. But the income types is what's really important on that, is that the main income types for publishing are called mechanical royalties, okay, and that's like when someone covers your song. Public performance royalties, that's whenever your song is played on radio. And then synchronization money, and that's whenever your song gets in TV and film uses and that sort of thing. And so for instance, let's say that I'm the publisher and Adrian, you're the musician in this situation, you're the songwriter. I get a sync license for a TV show or a film. Let's say it's $50,000. 25,000 of that goes to me as the businessman, the publisher, and 25,000 goes to you as the writer. So, you know, the profitable avenues are just those income streams of publishing, which then get split between the musician and the publisher in a 50-50 split.
So then would you say that film or radio, like which actual income source is typically the most profitable?
In the past, the most profitable has been public performance, and that comes from radio. So, you know, take Uptown Funk. I mean, Uptown Funk is rolling in public performance money hand over fist because of how it's getting played on radio right now, and that's a huge income source for people in publishing.
Yeah, they've done a ton of TV appearances too, and performances and stuff like that, and
yeah,
it's all over the place.
That's right, and it just keeps kind of spawning out further, because you get a hit song like that, it gets played on radio a lot, then people are picking it up for TV and film, And then, other bands are wanting to cover it on their album. They're playing it live, that sort of thing. So those are those main income streams there, because one hit song can just equal all these different kinds of income types. But, that still will get split into a writer's share for the musician and a publisher's share for the businessman.
Mhm.
So, and what was the other question you asked about the red flags?
Yeah, some red flags to watch out for once an artist or band starts gaining some popularity.
Um, well, the main thing I would want to say first of all is, because a lot of artists, a lot of bands are co-writing, and so the first red flag is to be organized and intentional about your publishing and your songwriting split. So, for instance, if you and I co-write a song in a band together, we need to establish what the split on that is. So, for instance, I wrote the music and you wrote the lyrics. That's generally a 50-50 split, because what happens is, and I tell my students this and everybody this, when money comes into the picture, people start to change. So it's really important to have established before success and money starts coming into the picture with your songs, to say, okay, Adrian, if we write a song that has Uptown Funk hit status, I wrote the music, you wrote the lyrics, we each get 50% of that. And then we split the publishing on it. Instead of, when it starts getting massive success, you and I are scratching and
No, I
clawing.
wrote the lyrics.
Yeah, exactly. No, I wrote that. No, man, that was my thing, or whatever. You see what I mean? So that's really the first thing, is when you co-write with other musicians, you need to establish the splits. So I'll give an example, like Metallica. Metallica, most of their songwriting happens between Lars Ulrich and James Hetfield. And those guys are kind of all for one, one for all. So when you look up their publishing information, they've created one music publisher called, get this, Creeping Death Music. All right. Very, very Metallica. And so Lars and James, they basically split all that 50-50 under the publisher Creeping Death Music. Other bands who will write songs together. And so if, in our situation, Adrian, I take 50% and I put it under Benom Drum Music, and then you put it under 50% for your share under Adrian Gary Music, whatever. And so that's really important before, with your original songs, before you start getting some traction, is to establish those splits on your songs, so that when a movie or a TV show comes to you and says, hey, we want to license this song and we want to pay you $50,000, that you're not still arguing over the percentages, because in that case you would lose out on an opportunity.
Gotcha. And then I have a question about sending in original music submissions.
Sure.
What are the best ways and the worst ways to go about that? And could you talk about solicited versus unsolicited?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say this on submitting music. Man, it's all about relationships. The unsolicited thing, you will get blacklisted if you send music unsolicited. So, for instance, I got unsolicited music sent to me all the time. People would write me letters like they knew me, dear Benom or dear Mr. Plumb, this, and this, and I couldn't do anything with it because it came to me unsolicited. I didn't know who they were. I didn't know how they got my information. Everything really has to come from an invitation from somebody else. So musicians and artists really need to put in the hard work and the time, and they need to be patient to build the relationships with people that can get them an invitation from someone. Because sending unsolicited music, you're either going to get blacklisted, meaning if you keep trying to contact them, they're never going to reply to you, or they're going to ignore you, or your music's going to go right in the trash. So doing the unsolicited thing is just a really good way to shoot yourself in the foot. So you have to put in the hard work of establishing some kind of credentials and get an invite from somebody. So, and this usually comes, and it's really not that hard. This usually comes from other musicians and bands and artists that you're working with. So, a lot of my clients would come to me through another client that I'd worked with. So we were working with an artist, and they would say, hey, I want you to listen to my buddy. He's really got some cool songs. And I would say, cool, send him my way. And that sort of thing is the best way to go about it. And so, you really got to be careful with unsolicited, because there's also a lot of legal implications on that too. If someone sends in a song unsolicited, and then a year later they hear the song on the radio, they can go and sue somebody, kind of thing. And they don't really know how this person heard the song, or it got passed along to someone else. So you need to get an invitation from someone. You need to put in the hard work and the time to build those relationships to do so.
And do you have any specific tips about how you would go about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, really, first of all, is just to get involved in your local music community. You need to be out at shows, playing shows with other bands, writing songs with people. Just being active in your music community is number one, and number two is really, go to music conferences. That's a really great way to network. I went to even if it's a crappy music conference, something cool could happen from it. So, for instance, I went to a crappy music conference in LA back in October. It wasn't very good. But I met somebody who invited me to be a panelist at Canadian Music Week in Toronto next week. And so, you never know who you're going to meet. So take the time to, you know, look up some different music conferences that are good to go to. Some of the ones that Billboard puts on you can spend a lot of money and not get a lot out of them. But most of these, like in Denver, we just had a Denver Music Summit, and that was a really great way for other Denver musicians to get together and to meet one another and to build some relationships. And these sort of things are happening all over the country, all throughout the year. So I would say number one is network in your local music community, and number two is get involved in those music conferences and network with people because things can really come from those kind of deals. So
And as far as music conferences, can you just find those? Are they like, can you just type it in on Google and they'll be there? Or how would you go about finding those?
a great resource for that is to subscribe to Digital Music News, and even if you go on Digital Music News, their website on the side, they usually have a little menu for events, and they're usually listing all the relevant music conferences that are happening around the country. And so Digital Music News has always been a great resource for that. Of course, Billboard is as well. If you go to billboard.biz, that's BIZ, billboard.biz, and then Digital Music News are fantastic resources to figuring out what conferences are happening. So,
So when you're speaking at a conference, how would you like to get approached by someone?
um, not with a hard sell, that's for sure. Where someone just kind of comes up to you and like, here's my CD kind of thing, and I'm awesome kind of deal. You like to get approached. I mean, look, it's actually a pretty small community in the music industry. So if there's a way that you know somebody else who might know me, you have a mutual friend, that's awesome. Hey, I know Adrian, or I'm friends with Zach, kind of thing, and I'd love to talk to you about publishing. That's always the best way because number one, that goes back to what I said about having a relationship. You know, so that's always nice. But just being cool and being laid back and not getting the hard sell because I mean nobody likes a door-to-door salesman. Nobody likes getting the hard sell on stuff. So just being cool, and if you can find some sort of connection between you and me, even if it, like, for instance, I put out an article recently that was about my uncle, and it was really interesting. I got contacted by a filmmaker in LA who is making a documentary, and he's been looking for information about my uncle, who was this famous record producer. And it's like, wow, I never would have expected something like that, but the guy read my article and tracked me down. And so just finding some sort of dot that you can connect between you and that person you're interested to talk to is really helpful. So that's what I would say.
Gotcha. And then moving on to a different topic, could you talk about 360 deals? What is a 360 deal?
Well, the 360 deal is when so a record label signs a recording artist, and they call it 360, as in 360 degrees of a circle. The record label will take a piece of the artist's income on all types of income, not just record sales, because you see the record companies used to just be involved with making money off of selling albums and sound recordings. But under the 360 deal, it means that the record company will take a piece of not only your record sales, but they're going to take a piece of your touring, they're going to take a piece of your merchandise, they might take a piece of your publishing, take a piece of your public appearances on TV shows or endorsements and that sort of thing. And it's really just a way for the record company to diversify their income because recorded music is not making as much as it once did. So, and that can even mean something called a passive financial interest, which means that if I sign Adrian to a 360 deal and you have let's say you already have a merch company that's producing all the merch for you as an artist. I could just say, well, I'm not producing the merch, but under the 360 deal, I get 10% of your merch income. So it literally just means that's a passive financial interest. I'm not directly involved in it. I'm not doing any work for it. I'm just getting a percentage of it just because I can. So that's something that's really interesting. Those 360 deals is that, a record company can just take a piece of your income just because they can under the deal. And they may not have done any work to actually deserve getting the income. You know what I mean? So it's just
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm just working for free. I'm getting free money. You just write me a check.
So because like record companies are starting to make a lot less money off actual records. What do you think they should like? It seems like you don't really like 360 deals. What would you prefer over them for?
Oh, I don't know. Here's the deal. I'm not so opposed to 360 deals as long as they're working.
Mhm.
As long as they're doing something for it, because I believe in someone being able to earn their keep. So, if you're going to give me tour support and you're going to go out there and actually do work for me on my tour and you're actually going to be involved in producing merchandise, then that's fine. But what I am opposed to is the fact that I just give you a percentage of my income without you doing anything. You just get blessed with it just because you're the record company. I think that's wrong. So, but I mean, again, the record company deals, they need to be more involved in actually developing the artist, because once Wall Street got involved with these major record companies, they kind of started looking more. I mean, they always looked at the bottom line, of course, but historically they would put more time into developing a raw talent. So you would get a couple of chances. You know what I mean? Now, if your album flops, you're done. They're going to drop you, kind of thing. And I would like to see more time and resources investing into the actual development of a raw talent. So if we have a talent who is young and yeah, maybe they're not there yet, kind of thing, but they believe in them and they actually take the time to mold them and shape them and really get involved in their career and not just be like, okay, give me a hit record and if it flops, you drop, kind of thing. That's I would like to see more agreements focus on the actual development and molding and shaping of an artist instead of just, give me that hit song and if it doesn't work, then you're done.
When should an artist draw the line?
On those 360 deals?
Yeah.
That's a very socially conscious question that they just have to say, here's the deal. You get a 360 deal put in front of you and you say, I hate this. I don't want to do this. That's fine. You can walk away from it. You just have to remember that the record company is going to poke this in your face that there's 100 other people lining up that will take that deal if you don't. So it becomes that fork in the road where you go, all right, do I just go ahead and eat this in order to get some momentum and some traction, which is what a lot of artists have done before. The Beatles have done it, Zeppelin's done it, Radiohead has done it. They kind of have to eat. They kind of have to eat a bad deal in the beginning in order to get some traction going, and then possibly they can break away once they have bigger success.
I was going to ask how often that happened. Is that typical, where you can kind of like pay your dues in the beginning, deal with the 360 until you get more traction and say? Is that a common thing?
Yeah, as long as you make enough money, absolutely. I mean, honestly, it is. It all comes down to leverage and success. In that Passman book, it's a great quote. Passman says that success in the music industry covers a multitude of sins, and it's very true. So it's common in the sense that yeah, you can take a bad deal in the beginning, and if that gives you enough traction and you build up enough leverage and you make enough money, then you can do whatever the hell you want to do, but that doesn't really happen with most people. Most artists end up getting, they have a negative account balance at the record company. The record company will give, a big advance and then they charge all these other things back to the artist account, sort of thing. And then they never end up recouping. And so that's the more common story, is that artists get into these record deals and they never end up recouping. So they're forever in the hole at a record company.
I know in class that we talked about recouping with credit. Could you give your spiel about that?
Right. These advances, the money that the record company charges back to you should be deemed recoupable but non-returnable, meaning that if you go $80,000 in the hole at your record company, you don't. When I say it's non-returnable, that means that you don't write a personal check for $80,000 to get out of debt. So it's not like an actual, you being in the hole at the record company isn't like a true loan in the sense that you have to pay it back. It's an advance against money. It's an advance for money against your future royalties. So that's something that you have to consider there, is that you shouldn't have to pay it back to the record company. It's not like an actual loan credit situation. So
Gotcha.
hope that makes sense.
So in the end, would you say it's worth it to take a 360 deal? Do you even really have a choice?
It depends on how much of a superstar you want to be, kind of thing. I think a lot of times the 360 deal is going to be a take it or leave it deal. So again, it really comes down to your goals. So, it's subjective. For some artists, I would say yes. For other artists, I would say no. I mean, for instance, I had an artist that I pitched for The Voice, and he made it onto one of the teams there and made it on national television. But I read through the whole agreement, and I told him I wouldn't sign this thing.
Yeah, they
And
pretty much shown you. Isn't it true that you have to pretty much consult them for anything that you want to do, any sort of appearances and new music, things like that?
if you make it to a certain point in the show, yes.
Mhm.
And the same thing goes for American Idol. They essentially can own your entire career for relatively 7 years. It depends, but for me personally, I mean, I'm kind of a hard-headed independent guy. I probably wouldn't sign the 360 deal unless they were giving me a lot of money. And they were working, because I'm all about, if you want to take a piece of my touring, my merch, my publishing, fine, but you have to work for that. I'm not just gonna give you a piece of it for you sitting back and doing nothing.
So, what would you say is the role of the record company nowadays?
Well, I mean, the role of the record company is to produce great sound recordings and to market them out to the public for commercial uses. So, I mean, a great master recording is of great value, because if you look at the master recordings of artists like the Beatles and Michael Jackson, I mean, if you were to use one of those in like a TV production or a film production or something, you're going to pay a lot of money for that. And on the flip side of that, those sound recordings are they're iconic. They're embedded in the fabric of our culture and of people's lives. The soundtrack of our lives, that whole kind of thing. Those master recordings can be of great value. So it even comes to the point where record companies are buying up other master recordings to add into their catalog, because those are of particular value. So again, it comes down to producing great sound recordings and marketing those to the public. But really, recorded music now is helping push concert tickets, which
Yeah.
back in the day, concerts were helping push record sales. So we've completely flipped it now.
Mhm. I don't think I have any more questions. We blasted through all of them. Adrian, do you have any more?
I'm all good. Ask everything.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on. Do you have anything else to say?
Well, I appreciate you guys having me, and if anybody out there that's listening has any specific questions, you can email me at professorplumbmusic@gmail.com. So Professor and Plum is PLUMB music@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has them.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's the show for tonight. Thank you, everyone, for coming on.
Excellent. Thanks for having me.